It's not without fail that technical difficulties can occur. So this is our first podcast. We're going to be talking about the circular city today. And I have the owner of Prefecture Go Academy, Richard, myself, and Donna. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing all right. We're doing good. So, Richard, why don't you start us off with the explanation of what the circular city is, and then we can dive into maybe the relevance of how it applies either in the game or a future application.
Sure. The circular city are different concepts. For example, there's the Venus Project, the Aravana Project, and there's different ones, and we want to take and borrow the ideas to teach education. And the circular city is mainly an organic city that starts in the center, and with using AI and what we have now and using those older concepts, we can make a city based on population and interests of the populace. So basically, we have the technology now. We just have to match it with past ideas. So yeah. So cool. Basically,
I know that as we're working towards the future as the game, but the future question mark. Be very specific. We're talking about a part of the game where the person enters into into a domed city that protects them from the fallout of a cataclysmic event, and that's the fundamentals of this concept and what we're doing as an application. But as we've discussed in the past, where can that application be in real life? If that happened here on Earth, I know I just saw this morning as I was reading, my news, using it on Mars or another planet in a space that we need to have an atmosphere where there is not an appropriate atmosphere for us to live without spacesuits, or replacing the atmosphere here on Earth if we did have that cataclysmic event. And so when it comes to all the parts, what's involved in putting that circular city together, as far as the resources we need, self-sustaining food, self-sustaining energy, self-sustaining events, whether it's educational events, whether it's medical, or whether it is also entertainment. And all those parts become important for a community to build or rebuild. What would you see being one of the first things that had to be established if a circular city was built, and then there was a challenge inside that city?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, education is important. So I think I'm not an expert, but that's what we're trying to do this podcast, to find experts on AI. AI is important. The blockchain is important in this endeavor. So I think that, that advancing AI, the morality of AI, how to teach AI and all that stuff. And then we can go to other things like the advancement in technology, and especially the environmental issue stuff, solar, how do we do that? But I think education is important. And yeah, that's the first one I would say, education. And I think AI and blockchain are the top first to develop the city. Oh, and it's important for it to come from individuals. It has to start from the bottom top. It has to be organic. It can't be a top down, from a system where somebody else says this is what has to be done. It has to happen organically through education, and we mirror all our ideas, collaborate, and then come up with the solution. So it's a student to solution focus. That's what I say.
Gotcha. So, we'll take that, we'll take that one step farther, the whole concept of working with not the individual, but as a group, as a community is what you're saying is important. So removing the I from the conversation and putting a we in the conversation. And we've talked in length about this whole process to begin with, but, education being the fundamental part, are you looking at that from the building perspective is what you're thinking about in this conversation, right?
Yes.
So, how would you see, and I'm going to pose this towards Donna now because she's our education expert. How would you see that being a fundamental portion of the build on this?
So first, I would like to applaud Richard and Stephen for this dynamic new way to see education. I think it doesn't take an expert to know that the current system that we have in the United States is broken. It's not working. It hasn't worked, and COVID has made that very evident. We are entering a more and more complex world. And in that complexity, we have to teach children in a different way. We have to empower them in a different way. We have to give them the tools needed to solve complex problems. We need to give them the tools to collaborate with each other, to think outside the box, and what Richard was referring to was that it starts with student-led. In education, we call it student-led learning. So the teachers, the adults are the facilitators, but they hold the space for the students' learning. And when students are driving the learning or the discovering, it's theirs, and they get on fire with it. They get excited about it, and that's the direction of a new education, and that's what I see you doing. That's what gets me very excited about this that you're bringing forward. It's the new way of education.
I mean, and so to dovetail into the conversation a little bit, for the folks that are playing catch up from our conversations a little bit, right?
Right.
What Richard and myself have worked on developing is a platform that takes gamification and puts you into a psychological environment to learn without being in a classroom, without being in a syllabus type lecture hall. It allows you to fail and succeed and allow you to grow in an educational base. So as that piece of our platforms being built and evolves, that is a different perspective at looking at education. So that's the first part. The other part is, what would you like to see? You're going to hear us say that a lot in all of our podcasts. You're going to hear us, that's Richard's tagline. I think if I would give him a tagline is, what would you like to see? What would you like to be a part of? How would you like to see this? What are you interested in? And so that's really the mantra of, the Prefecture Go platform. That's the mantra for everything, whether we're doing, the podcasts, whether we're doing, a game, whether we're, looking at the website or looking at the characters, there's just a lot of exciting things that follow that line of thought. So, we, thank you, Donna, for, your sentiment, but that's, it's part of the thing we're trying to accomplish. So, but when we go from the educational part, and learning, we're looking at this city in a way of building sustainable tools. So, these are other topics down the road, but of course, whether it's energy, or solar, geothermal, wind, we're leaning away from fossil fuels in the conversation, but not, dismissing them completely. We look at food in a hydroponics type manner. There's not a lot of space in a circular city, of course, so we have a lot of vertical grows that have to occur. And so there's a lot of exciting techniques in that realm. but it requires the knowledge and understanding how to do that. The intelligence of the entire matter, which, is its own genius, which we call Kaylee on our platform. What does the Kaylee stand for again, Richard?
It's kinetic artificial intelligent learning environment. So that's our fictitious AI, but we want help to actually make it a real AI. So we want to go from virtual to reality, simulation to realization kind of thing. So that's why we need you guys' help. Because one of the things I want to say that I am the co-founder, but so is Steven. Steven's the other co-founder. And what expertise we have is I'm the story writer. Steven does the visuals, so all the visuals you see is him. And the curriculum part, the first person's Donna here. She's the one that set the foundation of how we should teach, how, creatively and, away from the traditional way of teaching, a newer way of teaching. But that has to, like I said, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, student to solution. Avoid the middleman of, no, this is what you have to learn. This is the book you get. No, what do you want to learn? Companies, what do you need? And kind of, do that, like I said, from virtual to reality kind of thing. Yeah. And find that the experts we need is that middle ground. What do we need in the middle? So yeah.
Yeah, everybody needs to be a part to make, a real or a game version of a circular city occur, and the longer conversation, of course, is the we piece, we getting into a dialogue, of course, with getting people excited, finding a spark, what makes them interested in things, whether it would be in the gaming platform as we look at it. People take basically come down through a survey that helps understand, where they fit, how they what solution they belong in, what gets them excited, what gets them up in the morning, what would they like to learn, and how they can become a part of a solution. And so I think that really when you start talking about a circular environment versus a city, but an environment, if it's a learning environment or even any of the other pieces we may speak of, you have to have that passion to want to be part of that environment and to create a solution. The current society we live in is so individually centric and still working towards that team type environment. I mean, it's something that's pushed in a corporate world a little bit more now, but we learn currently in an I state, through lectures, through individual creative initiatives. And so looking at building a world that allows people to be reliant on each other, to use each other's expert knowledge, to bounce off ideas, to springboard that spark, that they all have and get them excited to build something together is really super important I believe, as we move forward as a society as a whole. And so Prefecture Go sets that stage virtually. And hopefully the stage that is set by Prefecture Go allows us to transcend individuals, to start to think differently about how real life problems work and how real life systems work. And whether we look at those systems from here or there, on planet, off planet, kind of scenarios as we evolve, through time. It's important that we find a level of peace in this, and I think that that's what's really important about a circular environment. When you read all the futurist books, when you read the latest article we posted, the underlying thing is a peace. There's a piece to this because now we're self-reliant on ourselves as a unit working together to build survival versus I need to survive or I need to live in this space. So, I like to maybe have a little more conversation about just, what does that really mean? What does it really mean to have a we versus an I? Either of you.
You want me to, well,
Sure.
Together, together our brilliance empower each other. We empower each other with our talents, our gifts, our passions, and we spark each other, we ignite each other, and I think that's important to see.
Yeah, what was really exciting yesterday when we had our meeting, our weekly meeting, and of course, maybe you might want to change the names because of their real people, but maybe go into that a little bit. I mean, that was a very invigorating story talking as we started talking about, your class and one of our characters, that's in our game that sparks the interest of, others right from the beginning. I think the scenario you were speaking of was the rainforest, right? So
would you like me to share that story?
I would love you to share that story. That's where I was going.
I began my career in a third grade classroom, and round about October, I was sure that I had chosen the wrong profession because I was feeling so challenged, so down and out about some of the challenging behaviors I had in my classroom. And one in particular, a young man named Mason, was the most challenging third grader I had in my 7 years in the classroom. And Mason had a huge chip on his shoulder. He came in angry, he came in defiant. He refused to do any of the work we were doing. He got in a fight like every other day, and the recess team would bring him in and he's fighting again. And I tried everything in my tool belt, everything they taught me in college. I tried to be really nice to him. I tried to be really stern with him. Nothing. And then one day, Mason took his shoe off and he flung it across the classroom at another boy, Dion. Well, he missed Dion's head, but when his shoe hit the wall, something in me hit the wall too, because I was like, whatever we're doing here with Mason, and for the previous 3 years he's been in education, it hasn't worked. Look, we try to punish him, we try to take things away, but it simply doesn't work. So something in me sort of like snapped, and I said, all right, I would like everybody to take all your paper and pencils, put them inside your desk, move them to the outside of the classroom, join me on the carpet. And of course, that had not been in my lesson plans, but when they joined me on the carpet, I said, we're going to build a rainforest. And we had been studying the rainforest. That was our science unit. And I always say, like, it wasn't some sort of teacher brilliance that I had. It was pure survival, because a couple days before that, although Mason refused to do any of the work, he had turned over a worksheet, and on the back he was drawing, and he was an incredible artist, like wow artist. And so in that moment, I guess the survival in me said, if I can get him busy doing art, I won't have to put up with his behavior. Well, what changed and what happened has changed the course of my life, really, because within a week, Mason was sort of the project manager of the rainforest, and we were building a complete rainforest in our classroom. There was a canopy up in the ceiling, and there were trees. There was a river running through the middle of it, and Mason was sure that we were going to save the Brazilian rainforest. And I thought, who am I to say that we can't, right? And he, in fact, drove the passion and the idea of saving the rainforest in a way that I could never have lesson planned. In the old traditional way of school, I could never have planned lessons to have the elevation of skills and collaborations and ideas and things that were coming out of this project that Mason was leading. And all of that passion and angst that Mason had now was being channeled into this project called the Rainforest. And there were 7 other 3rd grades in the building. They were all studying the rainforest. So it started out like, we could invite the other classrooms to come through the rainforest and we would be like the curators. And, something new started with Mason. He started opening books to figure out, what are we going to say when they get to the river? What are we going to talk about? And he was just all about that, And so, and those 7 classes, they got on board with saving the rainforest and what could they do? And they were selling kindness grams in the cafeteria. And, they just came up with all of these inventive ways to raise awareness about the rainforest and raise money for the rainforest. I think we did a parent play about the rainforest that they created. And they wrote the music for. And the thing is about Mason was that, and sort of the shift in my mindset about education was that when Mason's parents came in November for a parent-teacher conference, educated middle class mom and dad, when they walked through my classroom doors, I was shocked. It was like slow motion happening, because in their body language was the old Mason. I was like, oh, that's the old Mason.
Mm-hmm.
And I had forgotten about that Mason. Their body language said, like, tail between their legs, I know what you're going to say about Mace. He's, bad, he's broken, he's academic. We've heard this all before. And I was shocked because that wasn't the Mason I knew now.
Mm-hmm.
And they sat down. I had his portfolio and his report card, and I said, your son, and mom was like a deer in headlights. She was like, oh, I said, is brilliant. And she started to cry, like tears started rolling down her face. And I genuinely proceeded to point out all of the ways he was brilliant, because he was. And he was leading this project. And he was pulling other kids to new heights, to new, found talents, to new passions, to new, like, I have to like tell them it's time to go. The school's over, it's time to go, because they were so on fire about what they could do to save the rainforest. And when Mason came back after those parent-teacher conferences, he was a new kid. When he came back from those parent-teacher conferences, he came and his little shoulders were back, and he was so proud. He said, my mom, she was so proud of me. She put my report card in the refrigerator. She never did that before. And I just thought, what kind of power do we have as educators to break a child or empower a child? To see him as broken or see him as a leader. And that's the work that I do to this day. I help teachers empower kids. I help schools empower their faculty to do the same thing, to empower kids. And Mason that year grew 4 grade levels. His reading ability was kindergarten when he came in to 3rd grade. And he left with a 4th grade reading ability. He was on fire. And it's not because I, had great lesson plans, and not because I was a strong academic teacher, but because I provided a space, which I believe you're doing in this adventure. You're providing the same space that I provided for Mason, which was this think tank, which was this safety, which was this like spark, like what did you think about that? And what if he invited the other 4th grade, 3rd grade, and then he wanted to invite the whole school, and I thought, okay, let's invite the whole school. Like, this student-led learning is what I see you doing, which is so powerful and so impactful. I'll pause there. I get very passionate about that because it makes such a difference. And years down the road, the way that I led my classroom was exactly like the way Mason had set us out, which was this project-based learning. And I don't say this to brag. I say this to show that there's a different way to do education. in that was in this measured academic progress, my class always scored three times higher than any of the other third grades academically. And not because I was a strong academic teacher, but because I provided this environment that allowed their spark and allowed their passion, allowed their creativity.
Right.
And that's the way of things, you know. That's just, we've had it a little bit backwards. Like, if we can hold them down and make them do chapter 7 and all the questions at the end of it, and then after they do chapter 7, then they have to do this next thing. Well, it doesn't actually work in the real world like that.
Yeah.
You know, when we're collaborating together, it's not chapter 7 and then chapter 8. It doesn't actually work that way. You know, we're called to collaborate with each other and to, you know, problem solve together. Richard wants to do it this way, and I want to do it this way. Now we have to problem solve with each other, and there's this higher level of learning that has to be integrated into education.
Right. I mean, that's a super empowering story. I mean, that's, you know, that's a much more deeper dive than we had yesterday, and that makes the story even more empowering than, you know, what we heard yesterday. But it is, you're right, it's broken. The system of learning is broken because everything that we do in real life, whether we want to or not, is a creative venture of collaboration and building something new, or working out a problem, or solving a challenge. And some of us, like myself, have the luxury of having a creative brain. You know, that makes that really simple, but a lot of people don't. You know, they don't have that creative thinking natural capacity. So working in a team-based environment allows people to be more creative and bounce more ideas around and build upon that. And, you know, I'm gonna ask a different question here when it comes to that same, you know, story. How did the rest of the class respond to Mason in that role? Because we're talking about the we, you know, and I know you're singling him out as sort of the leader in the function, and probably the catalyst to how this got started to go, you know, roll the ball down the hill, if you will. But how did the rest of the class respond? You know, how did they start to interject their ideas? How did they participate? Because that's an important piece of this.
Yeah. So what I thought I was doing for Mason and the other spirited boys that were in the classroom with Mason turned out to be such a positive venture for the other 20 something kids in the classroom, because they, it's sort of like they broke out of the shell of you know, keeping them in straight lines and dust. It's like they broke free, and kids naturally are creative. When you said I have a creative brain, I think everyone has a creative brain. We just educate it out of them. So when you put 8-year-olds in a classroom and you say, we're going to raise money for the rainforest, which is what Mason wanted to do, the rest of the class completely blew me out of the water. I shared yesterday that the little girl Sophia, who never made a peep, who always did her homework, did this beautiful little printing that she, you know, did all of her worksheets, handed all of her homework in, barely made a peep. Well, she found her way in the rainforest, finding that she was in a group that, I don't remember what the assignment was, but she took the rainforest vocabulary words and she made a rap song. So now she's creating this rap song with our vocabulary words from the rainforest. And here's little Sophia now rapping to the rainforest, you know, using the words, the vocabulary words, but using them in a context of, like, she understands what these words mean. And the other kids were so surprised, like Sophia. I mean, they started like Sophia, Sophia, and they were so excited. Again, it's like, how do you take that spark and and keep throwing fuel on it.
Right.
That's the crux of it, right? But so here's little Sophia rapping to the rainforest. Now I ask her, the kids are so excited about what she's doing. I ask her if she'll write the lyrics up on a big piece of paper so the rest of the kids can also, know the song. And so before I know it, the whole class knows the song. They're rapping the song together. They're learning their vocabulary words. They're creating together. They're collaborating together. And now they integrated that song. Like when somebody would come into the classroom, they were all rapping that song, and to see the empowerment that brought for Sophia, her voice, her confidence, her ability to collaborate with other kids, that they really liked her idea. She was willing to take some more risk about standing up on the stage that we built and singing
Right.
the vocabulary. That's just one example, and I could tell you 100 more, but it's unexpected things come out of that's the one that comes to mind, Sophia.
I think that the takeaway that I heard there that was most prevalent was that how the group supported her because they didn't know that she had a certain talent.
Yes.
And a lot of times I see this in coaching. I see both of my parents are educators. I've seen this in a lot of things where kids don't voice their talents because people look at them as shenanigans. Total shenanigans are always going on in my house with my 3 kids. And so, trying to find what that specific thing would be that becomes empowerment tool is very challenging as a parent. But your peers seem to help elevate certain activities in a positive and can be a negative way. We've all experienced that. But taking that concept of building each other up, working together, putting that thought process in is really, the underlying theme of what we are trying to do, and so that's a great example. Kudos to you for, discovering a solution in your classroom that, I know some teachers have tried. I don't know how successful or how unsuccessful they were, but definitely a direction that is empowering to every person's skill level. That's one of the things that I also am taking away from your conversation is we all know that every student and every person learns at a different capacity. And this has always been a challenge, in Common Core, which, is I believe I don't know if it's a national thing or a New York State thing, but Common Core curriculum really was the trying to re-level the playing field, and it did a really bad job. I would say it's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen occur. We have this thing called Regents in New York State. I hate that. I watched my kids go through it. I didn't grow up in New York, so I watched them go through that. And it's not a fair assessment of skill levels, of what teachers do, how kids work together, because everyone learns at a different capacity. And in the example you provided, it really shows how each student, each person pulls each one along until someone finds that space that they know, hey, little Jimmy needs a little extra help, but he's really good at this. This person over here is good at that, but lacks some of those things. And instead of saying, well, that's not, you're really bad at that skill, we don't want to talk to you about it. They kind of work together to help grow, and they grow together, and they don't even know they're doing it, which is the most important part of the conversations. They don't even know they're doing that path. They've left everything, left barriers behind. They've removed all those pieces, and going back to our topic, sociologically, removing the barriers of, race, sexuality, ethnicity, and just working together and not labeling is a huge, huge thing that happened in your story, I'm assuming, which you just left everything on the table. We're building a rainforest. Let's work together to make a rainforest. So this is fun. Who's going to do this? Who's going to help with the river? Who's going to make maybe a jingle up, as they're going along? And if they don't know something, it sounds like someone picked up a book and started to do research. And that's a third grade level, you said? So that's mind blowing. I mean, I could barely get my 7-year-old to sit up and read a story and learn his vocabulary, at night, so to see someone pick up a book and go through or an iPad or, the internet, whatever that, preference was, back to the question I posed Richard, what is the most important part is education in this city, research and information, I think comes along, knowing how to take the tools that are just laying there and turn them into something. And never to assume that anyone's an expert at anything, that we're just working towards a goal. Does that, Richard, really, how do I pose this? When it comes to the education piece and what we're doing, and we've talked about having a library of information, as we've gone along, the library would be there. The person would be able to escape to the library to learn information, to bring it back into the game, to continue, to set the stage. So, how do you see that process being hugely important, those parts together, laying that groundwork for someone to come in and see the tools and then start to do digitally what Donna's now said, in a real world scenario.
Well, like I said, that kind of inspired, going back to the story of this was supposed to be a brick and mortar, some education, but mostly playing games in a brick and mortar facility, a year and a half ago. But the lockdown created, what do we do now? Steven said, why don't we do an online platform? And I thought that was a good idea. And that's why we became partners now. I said, well, I don't know how to do that. So we did that. And then my other aha moment during the lockdown is my niece was taking online classes last year, and she just was struggling with it at first because it was just something new. And I thought, well, we need to fix that. And then meeting Donna in one of my veteran classes, she was like the Mason story and her desperation, like, now that was my aha moment, is all three coming together. It's like, this is what we need to do, go totally vocational, totally education. And my buzzword, student to solution, avoid the middleman. And I'm very hopeful hearing the Mason story. Yeah, I'm hopeful for this generation, because the Generation Z and the next generation Alpha, they're already working in communities. They don't have my biases. So I thought, oh, this is perfect for them. They work in communities. And the other thing is, what tools do they use to do trial and error? And one of them is gaming. Gaming is all about trying it, seeing how you advance, and trying again. And if you don't succeed in this realm of the game, go to another game that suits your personality. So yeah, so I'm very hopeful for the future, and like I said, the new way we need to teach. And that's what we're doing the podcast for. What do you want to learn? How do you want to learn? And we want to talk to experts and the industries. What do you need, kind of thing. So. Yeah.
And so, as we're approaching our hour here, of discussion, that's the important part. What do you want to see? What do you guys want to see? What kind of things would you like to see in our platform as an educational piece, as we're developing? What kinds of things would you like to learn? What style games would you like to see teaching you? Because gamification is the basis for learning how to do the items in the educational piece. But it's not like someone's going to be working in pods, sort of like Donna's classroom, where it's localized. You're going to be you might work with someone from across the world. You don't know, one day, and the next day you may not. There might be multiple people, but it might be different different people in that platform at the same time. But you know, what do you want to hear as topics on our podcast? We are going to devote into you know, parts of the game, you know, the characters, the storyline, things like that, you know, and talk a lot about that through the next, you know, few weeks of the podcast. But of course, we want to know what you want. We want to hear what and understand where your thoughts are. You know, it can be anything. It could be a social issue that's going on and how we're addressing that inside the game. You know, it could be an educational issue. It could be just a specific topic on you know, what is involved inside, you know, our game in our city. You know, the premise of this circular city is that it is a we scenario. It also is part of the storyline, you know, from build off of the cataclysmic event, which we'll get into another day. We won't ruin that part. But you know, please let us know. Please subscribe. Please, you know, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Go to our website. You know, sign up for our newsletter. We're gonna have a lot of very exciting and new things coming out in the next, you know, few months that hinge off of these topics and also off of our platform. So, anything else you want to close with, Richard?
No, you said it well. What do you? Yes. Thank
Excellent.
you, Donna. Thank you, Donna, our guest, and
Excited.
thank you, Stephen, for hosting. And
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefectureisp.com.